Hello, hello. It's the Friday Coven, and I'm coming to you from Rockaway Beach, New York, and it's been such a relaxing, laid back, mellow day. And I don't think the last time I spoke today was like at 11 a.m. So, welcome. So, today we're going to talk about personal liberation and freedom. And I don't know a lot about Easter, but what I do know about Passover is it's commemorating the time. I'll just say we left a dangerous place and fled for freedom. So let's talk about freedom. Yay! So the other day I posted about that my one woman show. If you weren't there, was about personal liberation and people who didn't have freedom, um, and it wasn't always inflicted. It was something that is created. And so there's different levels of freedom, like we in America have many more freedoms than third world countries, but in ways we have our own. It's like sometimes freedom, you have so much freedom that you fuck it up because you have to create some kind of suffering, not on purpose, but just subconsciously. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I welcome you if you're watching on the replay or if you're watching live. Um, I keep saying four-ish is the time for this Friday Coven, and then every time at 4:30, I'm like, how did it get to be 4:30 already? So here we are. If you're new to this, I'm Enchantress Shane. I'm a show the fuck up expert, and I mostly work with people who are overthinkers, introverted. I don't like labels, but if I have to use them, then I would say sensitive and smart people who tend to shy away from what feels like confrontation, even if it isn't. So I'm pretty new to having glasses on, but this glare is kind of weird. So I'm going to sort of find my place here. So I want to talk a little bit about what is personal imprisonment, right? Like I'm going to give you some smart talk, but also see how it lands with you. So it's like this state of being confined or restrained or restricted in some way, right? So I'm not talking, of course, I always find it an out, but it's not physically. So I'm talking about emotionally or mentally, um, or self-expressionally. And there's many different contexts and it depends on the situations. But if I'm talking about like emotional imprisonment, it refers to being constricted or refined, like trapped. So the most extreme would be trapped in a really emotionally abusive relationship. But really what I'm focusing on is the limitations of self expression and emotion because it wasn't the way you were raised, or you're not surrounded by people, or you just haven't had any experience, or you don't have any tools in sharing your emotions. Now, growing up, the only way I ever saw anybody share their emotions was it like explosion, whether it was in the schoolyard or in my house. It wasn't like now where people sit down with their children and say like, what does it feel like for you? Or maybe you don't know houses like that, but when I was working with kids, that was how I taught parents to be with their kids, was to get curious about the emotion instead of yelling at them. And there's a lot of old school people that still do the punishment and yelling, and that's kind of the way I was brought up, because that's what teachers did, that's what parents did. It wasn't like there was social emotional classes or workshops or the internet and you had to go to the library, and maybe you could implement and maybe not. So as an adult, it's your responsibility to seek out, different ways to have communication with people that bring in emotional freedom, right? Because emotional imprisonment means you're afraid, you hold back, you can't really say what you want for fear that you will be rejected. That's the biggest snafu. Is like most of the time emotional imprisonment has to do with the fear of getting rejected in some way. Okay, so like let that in. So it can come from your own fears, insecurities, or past traumas. And it can also create social anxiety. So I wrote a book. My first book is called Anxious, how to, something about anxiety the feminine way. And the reason I say that is the feminine way is not to do with women or men. It's just has to do with being emotionally aware and having emotional techniques that A, get you to be clear about your own state, and then give you permission, self permission, on how to connect with others in that intense state. It's not always easy, especially if there's a lot of stress or it's like layered. You know, I could talk about this forever. And especially social anxiety, because I think we've been raised from TV shows and movies and media is like the only way to be social in college or high school is to do it at a bar. Now, I'm aware that there are many people that, went to art school and I don't know, like I just still see that the most, like when people come to me for relationship support, or to find a relationship, what they know is like, oh, I go to bars to meet people, or where else do you go? So now, over the pandemic, I think a lot of people really got to realize that they can meet others in different places, but social anxiety impacts people at work, it impacts people at their, all different places. And that's a way of being imprisoned. I had a client recently and he hated going to his work meetings. They were remote, but there was so much micromanaging going on and he hated speaking up. It was like a real social anxiety and he was expected to work on a team. And so when you're socially anxious, it's really hard to delegate or share your ideas. Okay, so the next one is mental imprisonment, and this is more like based on your belief systems or like how your cognitive brain works. So it doesn't necessarily, it seems like fact to the person that's mentally imprisoned, but actually, if another person is listening to it, like me, I would be like, oh, this person has all these limitations. Um, and it can be something like when I meet someone in any environment and they say, what are you? And I know they want to know, like, am I Jewish? Am I Christian? Am I, where am I from? Where's my family from? It's not that I'm judging. I am judging a little bit, but I'm also assessing, oh, that's how they're going to feel comfortable with me, is if they know what I am. Or always happens when I meet somebody from Brooklyn. Either it's me or them that says, what part? It's like, what part are you from so that I can judge you? And when somebody says a part near me, then I say, what high school did you go to? So it's like this mental imprisonment of like very tunnel thinking. Like, this is the only way. And we know, or at least I know, I think most of you know, is there's multitudes of ways to do everything. And based on your experiences, it might seem like there's only one way. And especially if there's fear or lack of sleep or anything that feels really shitty, then it could feel just that way, right? But then when you're rested and you're well fed and you feel nourished and you're even a little bit open minded, you could open yourself up and be like, oh, wow, I never thought of that way. But if you're a person that doesn't like to ask for help, it's really hard to even imagine that there's another way. So all of these things to me are like self-inflicted, self-imposed imprisonment. And it's voluntarily putting yourself in a shitty position of like, this is the only way to do it. And it's a shame, It's not shameful, but it is a shame that when I'm like, if somebody is really negative, I used to go out of my way. Somebody's really negative and, oh, well, blah, 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 well, if I had a car, then it wouldn't be a problem. And it's like, well, have you asked for anybody to drive you? No, nobody would. It's like, well, you don't know if you don't ask. So I've stopped shooting around my positivity to people, because if people aren't open to it, then it's a waste of energy, and it usually separates that person from you. And then they can say, oh, you see these positive people. So I don't do that anymore. Um, so yeah, this personal imprisonment is really a shitty thing, and it can really have a bad effect on like your well-being, and it brings frustration and helplessness and really a loss of autonomy. So when you lose your autonomy, guess what? All you can do is run around and blame everybody else. So this program that I'm leading right now, that's one-on-one, it's called Devotion. It's really about, when I say make it about yourself, right? It's not like, oh, excuse me, I'm just going to fuck everybody else, like make it about myself. But if you're making it about everybody else, and you're blaming everybody else, and you're looking for help, but you're not asking for it, what that does is it gives you very little energy to proceed in life in whatever you're doing. And so what are you actually being devoted to when you're walking around yelling and blaming and, being pissed off and avoiding your emotions? It's like you're expending all this energy, blah, 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 and then you're exhausted. So when you're devoted to yourself, and you know how to refill your energy, and you know how to refill who you are and how you wake up in the morning, what happens is then when you give enough to yourself, you can then give to others. Otherwise, you're just wasting your energy, and you're actually giving from a really empty place. And usually that sounds like some aggression of like driving on an empty gas tank, like fumes, like you start to have smells, you're ruining the engine, like all these things are happening because you're not resourced. So if you know how to make it about yourself, then you can be so full and give. Like we had two beautiful seders the last 2 nights, and I was not feeling resourced. And then I was like, wait a minute, I have to feel resourced. So I went to the dentist. I was supposed to go back. I was like, you know what? I can't. I have like 2 busy days ahead of me. And I got to rest. Today, I scheduled nothing. I got to rest. I was on the computer and I was doing some things. Of course, now I wish I would have slept more, but I slept late. Like I did all the things. I made it about myself because I had to. I had to. And so it is a skill. And it's the skill that is opposite of like, get shit done, have your to-do list. Because when you're operating in that way, things don't feel special anymore. There's no freedom in that. Then you've created more work for yourself with things that you're passionate about. And then you don't really give a shit, and there's no spirituality, and there's no connection. And you're just like, my to-do list isn't done, and that's all you get to focus on. So this personal imprisonment could be like, let's say you're a business owner, you have now made a job because you don't include any joy, and now you're trapped by your to-do list, and you can't fully express because you're just like focusing on the things that you need to do. So this self-imposed imprisonment is, to me, really obvious. Like I can see when somebody enters a room and they're like totally in another planet, and they're not present. So in fact, the other day, I won't mention names, but I went to an event and I saw a friend of mine, and he was just like bugging out. I don't know what he was doing. I didn't even know. I didn't want to ask. He didn't feel approachable. He just was like standing there, not being present, and he's usually a really fun person. So I was feeling bold, and I went over and I'm like, go walk around this room 3 times. And I want to tell you the cool thing that he did. So I said that, and the way I pictured it was walk around the room 3 times and then come back and hang out with your friends. But no, he did something super cool, and he's not a ding dong. Like he's done work before, self-development work. He walked around the room 3 times very slowly. and like had an adventure. And I thought that was so fucking cool. But basically, why I'm so careful with myself is I can see everybody's inner life. I'm not always right, but a lot of the times I am. And that's because I have felt socially awkward, painfully aware, hyper aware of myself. And so I can see it, and not only just see it, but feel it in others. It's not always the best thing. Like tonight, I have an event at my synagogue, and I'm super relaxed. And I'm like, it starts at 6. Okay. So I'm already like, oh, this is my like house sweater. I love wearing this sweater. And I'm like, okay, I'm already planning. How can I wear this sweater tonight? I don't think I can. Like I don't know. It doesn't go. I don't want jeans. I want to get dressed up. So there's something about how I'm my clothing, which is why I love selling clothing. I'll just throw that in. My clothing is not just like for fashion, it's almost like protective love armor, right? This sweater is so cozy and yet it's still bright and lively, but I am tired, I'm comfortable feeling, and I don't want to wear something that's tight or fitted. I have these tights on. So when I get dressed, it's like things like that help me overcome. It's one of my things I do with people. It's like I overcome the social anxiety by like, oh, there we are. Hey, Pat, I wasn't seeing anybody's comments. So just giving myself permission to wear my clothes as love armor so that when I get on a stage, when I eat dinner, when I go out with people, that I'm not self-conscious where I can't relax. Like there's enough energy in the room where it's hard to relax sometimes. So therefore I need my coat and my boots and my sweaters and my adornments. Like it's really important. And so when I work with people and I can see they have a uniform or something that they're hiding in, it's like you can still have a uniform of comfort and armor, but you don't have to be wearing all black or all, shapeless clothing. Um, because that's another way that people are personally imprisoned is they think, especially I want to say people who, and I'll admit myself too, like people have gained weight over the pandemic. Like when I started selling clothing, so many women came over to me and they were like, I can't buy anything, I've gained weight. I'm like, wow. So if you are over a certain weight or you have a certain look that you don't like, it's like you don't have permission to look beautiful. That's crazy. And yet I understand that too. It's like I've seen so many body positive women stuff online, where women are saying like, because I'm fat, I don't get to look pretty, and they're like, I want to change that. So permission for everyone, men included and women included, to feel amazing in your clothing no matter what your body shape is right now. It's all temporary. Even this body is temporary, to be honest. So this, yeah, I just want to, bring it back to this idea of personal imprisonment is not just, big suffering. It's emotional imprisonment, it's mental imprisonment. It can be physical imprisonment when it comes to clothing, self-expression imprisonment, like not going out of the box in any way because you want to belong or be accepted. And these are all very normal. It's not like, oh, that's weird. But to, like sort of like take a little hammer and hatchet at those things so that when you get dressed, when you get on a stage, when you speak up in a conversation, that you're not just speaking the things that are good for conversation. Here's a perfect example of that. When people say, it is what it is, or you're not wrong, like these little idiosyncrasies, they're just like corny, but they're also filling space when maybe nothing has to be said. Um, or there's an awkward moment, and like allow yourself to feel that instead of filling it with some corny weird thing. I wrote a post about, because it's a year since I began the Nice Guy Rehab course, and what I have found in working with a lot of quintessential nice guys, I put my quote fingers for that, is that there's a lot of like innuendo and like corny jokes being told. And why do they do that? So why does anybody do that? It's just like a way to avoid or a way to be liked. But the truth is that those corny jokes or those little innuendos are actually super turn off, and they're not funny, you know. And so when somebody tells me like a hurdy hur in the moment, it's like if it's once and they say it, I'll name it. You know, like, oh my God, that's so corny. Why are you being corny right now? What's happening for you? But if they do it a lot, then I see it as a coping mechanism that's like, I just want you to like me. And it's not like I just realized that with one person. There's like a lot of people. And yeah, and it doesn't have to be done. You know, you can say nothing. And nothing is a lot of times it feels confrontational because maybe in the past, like, you know, I don't want to get into the mother wound right now, but you know, in the past, silence has been like, don't you want to say anything? Like maybe somebody's yelled at that person so that they pull back. Okay, so Tina shares, where would you feel comfortable in? You may disagree with this, but what I learned in fashion and learned in many things, you can't go wrong with black and white. Yeah, so that's the thing, Tina. Thank you for sharing. And also, like, if you dress for fashion, you're going to have to always be buying new clothes, you know? So I dress for my own joy. Like, if you're dressing to be on trend, you have a moving target that will never stop. You know, I think color is always in. Like, sometimes I get questions from people that are like, can I wear my furry hat in the summer? Like, I can't. It's after Labor Day or whatever. I say, don't give a shit. Do whatever the fuck you want. You know, like, if you have items of clothing that are exciting to you, wear it whenever you want. You know, I'm sure every magazine, I don't know. I don't even think there's any rules anymore. I'm a rule breaker. So if you want to wear white in the winter, and you feel stupid about it, call it winter white and have a great day, you know? Like all those rules that are like, oh, do this if you're over 40, don't wear that. If you're over 180 pounds, don't do that. It's like, you know, do what you want. I see girls these days, young teenagers, and they're just, you know, they're what some people would call inappropriate. And I'm like, you know what? They ain't hurting anybody. Let them do what they want. Um, yeah. Yeah, yeah, I know. It's interesting. I'm glad that you wrote that today on Instagram. It's like corny jokes. There's something, okay, first let's just say there's underneath humor, there's always something there, right? Either it's a pain or either it's something that you want to bring up to connect with someone else. Like there's something there that is reaching because a joke is about connection, right? Whether you're telling it on stage or you're sitting at dinner, it's to get a reaction from the people you're with. And so if you're looking for a reaction from people, just it's okay to know that and own that, you know, and then just sort of see what else is there. Now, my job as a mentor is to find the truth, right? And so the truth of something could be there that's a little bit deeper, like, oh, right. So even in a joke, so you're telling a joke, waka, 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 right? And the other people are like, ah, you're so funny. Now, the person who told the joke has a sense of belonging, has a feeling of like, yay, I made people laugh. It's totally normal. But when it becomes a problem is, and here's an instance, so I'm working with someone or even just being with someone and I'm talking about something that's very intimate to me and I'm revealing something that's very intimate and like it's taking some vulnerability for me, and the response from the other person is like, well, that's what she said. And I'm like, dude, I just shared something that I was really scared to talk about, and now you're throwing a joke my way. Like, that's fucking weird. And also, it's telling me your emotional intelligence is afraid. Now, again, totally normal. But if you're a guy and you're looking for a romantic relationship and that's your go-to in terms of connection, it's not going to work. So that's where it becomes a problem because it actually pushes people away. Like if I'm with someone and I'm on a date, let's say, and someone is giving me innuendo after innuendo and they're like laughing about it, it's telling me they're not present, because if they were present, they would really be connecting to me and not laughing about a joke that works with other people somewhere else. Do you know what I mean? And then they're trying to get their self-esteem from other times and places that are not with me. Now, in that moment, though, it takes a whole lot of confidence to say to somebody, wow, when I hear you say that, I get really nervous. Like, that's a beautiful thing to say, but not everybody can do that. So, if someone can just learn, and this is why I love working with people who are not super stuck and fucked. I love working with people who have enough self-awareness to be like, I keep making these annoying jokes and I don't know how to stop. And it's because it's a bad habit. That's all, you know? If you're on a date or you're relating to someone and you can't seem to stop making corny jokes, it's a bad habit that you picked up along the way that you used as a coping mechanism so that you wouldn't feel stupid or feel your feelings. And that makes sense. All right, everybody. So I'm going to get close to wrapping up. I'm so glad you both showed up. Yeah, totally. Totally, Tina. And that's like why I love teaching about getting dressed, you know, or enrobing as I call it, because I worked with so many women who just wear black. They're like, I don't know how to get dressed, so I just wear black. And that's all they own. Black, black this, black that, black dress, black pants, black sweater. But they have so much to give. And I'm like, wow, okay, so let's start slowly. You know, it's not just shopping and not everybody's good at it. I think I do a lot of quoting fingers. There is like put on a scarf or throw on a hat, you know, and it's a way that women and men imprison themselves because like a lot of men do it with plaid. Like they just don't know what else to wear. So they put on plaid. Or if they have blue eyes, they always wear blue. I am a fan of that. But to know that you have so many choices instead of that personal imprisonment that's like in this little, you know, tunnel vision, it's limiting and it feels like a bummer, you know? And if it doesn't, you could be like, nope, Shane, I'm happy to wear black all the time. Great. But what I'm saying is the people who are interested in embracing their colorfulness, embracing all the things that life has to offer, all the levels that you can go in your personal growth. I get super excited about that stuff. And I get super excited about people that don't want to defend their limitations, but want to be like, yeah, you know what? I'm limited and I don't want to be. That's how I started dipping, is that I was like, I have no problem. I self-express every way. There's always more to go in each self-expression. But physical discomfort is not my thing until I met Graham Cullis, and he basically gave me my own rap about being in the ice cold water. I could give him a million reasons about why I should defend any limitations I had. Why would I do that? You know, I don't like going around defending my limitations. Like, there's always a lesson I can teach, but like, if I can learn something beyond what I've learned in the past, cool, then I want to do that. So when people come and, you know, try to give me like, oh, devil's advocate, it's like, okay, cool, stay with that. I don't give a shit because I'm here to be expansive and I'm here to help people be expansive beyond what makes them suffer. That is where I'll end. All right, everybody. So if you're coming to West End Synagogue tonight, I'll see you there. If you're not, have a happy Easter, a happy Passover, a happy Ramadan, all the things. If you don't celebrate any of them, because I don't really like that preschool programming where you celebrate everybody's holiday, have a beautiful day, whatever day you watch this. And if you're watching this, I'd love to, hear from you. Let me know if you watch on the replay or if you want to work with me. Right now I have my devotion program available. It's 1 month and then we see if we shall continue. And I always use my unconventional icon method. And I wish you an amazing rest of your day. Send me a message if you want to talk about how I can support you. Have a great evening, morning, afternoon, whenever you're watching this. Bye.